Hello everyone, this is Dr. Achal and I welcome you all again in our course module titled as Services Marketing. Now in previous discussion we have dealt with the concept of the pricing, and in today's deliberation we will be dealing with a fresh P, that is all being related within a communication factor or the promotional appeal. Now before moving into the subject, we can definitely say that one of the P, that is the promotion, it is very important P, because even if the customers are knowing of with regard to the offerings that you are trying to deal upon, at many of times you as a service provider, you have to persuade them, you have to convince them. Motivation factor is also being employed so that they can be motivated enough to go in for the purchase decisions. So the communication which is being talked of as one of the promotional appeal, and how to just connect out with your target audience. There can be different options to move in for. Either we can have a personal selling, we can have an advertisement, we can go in for the print media, broadcast media. In the advertisement category we can have a print media or the broadcast media, or any other kind of media can be chosen depending upon the needs of your target audience, keeping into consideration your objectives to fulfill upon, taking into account the competitors' strategy, the resources that you are having in your disposal. All these factors has to be bear and that has to be taken into mind before choosing out a particular promotional appeal for your selected target audience. Now, how to communicate out effectively or why it is being needed? We know that for the purpose of informing, and not only for the purpose of informing, as we have said that the persuasion factor should be created, the motivation element should be generated, and that should be generated so that the customers or the consumers, they themselves are being motivated enough to move in for the purchase decision process. Because in case of the services, we know that they are somewhat certain kind of complexity and the challenges are being involved on the part of the service provider or the marketers, because they are definitely they are intangible in nature, they are perishable, they are variable and inconsistent. So all these important characteristics and the features that is being prominently seen in case of the services, they themselves being talked of as giving out a challenge to the service provider, the marketer, to just choose which kind of particular mode of advertisement or which kind of particular mode of promotional appeal will be best suited for the purpose of persuading and motivating out the target audience to go in for their purchase of their offerings. So before moving in for the different kind of tools and the techniques which are there in the hand of the marketers to move in for, we should also be having a clear cut idea regarding the objectives that a communication or the promotional appeal fulfills upon. And we know that this is the objective that is revolving around the field of information, the objective of the fulfillment of the persuasion factor, creation of the motivation factor amongst the purchasing behavior of the target audience. Apart from it, we can say that the promotional appeal or the communication factor, that is how we are connecting out with the target audience, how we are developing a bonding relationship with the target audience. Now this is in a field, this is in a factor which says that as in a marketer, we have to assure, we have to give them certain kind of assurance. Now these assurance may be in the form of the building upon a credible image, which is very much being distinct enough, which is very much being unique enough in the market area, and that is unique enough in terms of the value creation that you are associating with the offering that you are trying to propose in the market area. So creation of the unique and a distinct image is very much being needed enough in this competitive scenario. We have learned many a times we have said the same fact that we as a service provider and a marketer, we are living in this very competitive scenario which is gradually evolving and transforming over the period of time. Now that competition factor which is healthy enough to talk of, because the healthy competition is required, it is imperative not only on the part of the customers, it is beneficial, but it is equally being relevant enough, it is equally being imperative for the business organizations or the service providers, because herein the healthy competition itself, they are acting as a motivating factor to go in for the best, to go in for the adoption of the best practices, to move in for the adoption of the good and the best procedural plans and the policies, which is very much being efficient enough and which is very much being diligent enough towards meeting out the needs and the expectations of the target audience. So this particular point of action, this particular point of thing has to be born in the minds of the marketers before going in for the adoption of a particular promotional appeal. Now, we are seeing that this is also one of the objective, that is the objective of creating a brand assurance, very much being needed enough in this competitive scenario, because we know that nowadays we are having a different alternative set of brands for the same product. Even if for the same brand the different sub-variants are there. Keeping into account our income liquidity, keeping into account the aspirations and the expectations which we are holding out from the purchase and the consumption of a particular offering, taking into factor the utility or the benefits that we are trying to derive from the purchase and the consumption of a particular offering, we as a customer or a consumer, we are going in for the purchase process. So, the brand loyalty, definitely we can take an example, like suppose the tags and the logos of the IIMs, IITs, they do create certain kind of assurance in the minds of the students or the academic fraternity when they are going in for the joining of a particular kind of course. So, this particular kind of field, that is the field of the brand assurance, definitely it is being conveyed and effectively it is being communicated to the target audience with the adoption of a good promotional appeal. Similarly, there are certain other kind of factors to, or there are certain other kind of objectives to fulfill upon, and these objectives may be in the form of the creation of the good credibility, giving them a motivation factor, coming out with a unique identity which is very much being distinct enough as compared to the identities, as compared to the offering which the competitors are trying to float in the market area. So, by adoption of this particular, we can go in for the sales promotion. If we are trying to induce out our target audience for a shorter period of time, we can have a flotation of bonuses, premiums, or we may either go in for the giving of certain kind of discount factor to the target audience, so that they can be motivated enough to move in for the purchase process. But the selection of the promotional appeal, especially with regard to the sales promotion, they are being done only for a limited specified period of time, and this is in a strategy which is being talked of as a strategy of making out in a purchase decision for a short term inducement. I mean, short term inducement is being given to the target audience so that they can move in for the purchase process, and definitely after the purchase process they will have a feel of consumption, and if the consumption, after the consumption, if they are being they are being satiated enough and the delightment factor is being cherished by them, definitely they will be creating a binding relationship with the offerings that they are trying to propose in the market area. Now, that delightment factor is important, because here if the customers and the consumers are having out the feel of delightment, definitely that will be a leading factor towards building upon a credible image of the brand or the offering that you are trying to propose, and that credible image will be creating a loyalty factor for the customers or the consumers, and here the present and the potential customers will be, we can say that the potential customers will be turning out as the present customers or the consumers for you in the shorter period of time. Now, this is also one of the objectives. Now, moving into the other objectives, you can say that firstly, for the purpose of developing, for the purpose of crafting out a good communication appeal, we have to just not only go in for the development of the internal communication as it is being written here in the slide, that is we are just trying to connect with the internal audience who are there residing or who are there being deployed in an establishment, working in any of the capacity, working in the capacity of the functional manager, working in the capacity of the other departmental heads or the units or the sections are being created in your establishment or in your organization. So, definitely the internal communication or getting bind up with the things who are acting as an employee for your organization is very much being needed enough, and they are being talked of as a very important priority that is to be taken into account by the service provider or any kind of marketer. So, here as it is being written here in the slide, that is the goal or the objective of the internal and external communication. Specifically for the internal communication, we can say that this is a method which is an organization is trying to go in for, and they are using it to communicate amongst the staff. The internal communication is there, and it is covering a broad range of communication styles such as written or oral across the different organizational tiers and the levels of the formality. Now, this slide is itself, it is self-explanatory that we know that every organization, they have primarily 3 levels of structure to talk of, or these 3 levels of structure in the form of the top level, we can have a middle one, and definitely the lower one stands for the operative level. The top level of the management cadre, these are the employees who are authorized enough to go in for the critical process. They are concerned towards the policy formulation. They are focusing on their efforts towards the strategic issues, like the planning mechanism is being done, the procedural plans are being formulated, how to go in for the drafting of the corporate mission and the vision that are being channelized by them, and they are working in the capacity of the CEOs, chief executive officers. We are having managing directors, general managers are there. Now, in case of the service organization also, even if the services are they are heterogeneous, they are perishable and variable, and they are intangible, even then every establishment or every service organization, they have a certain levels of communication, they have a certain levels of the management to talk of. So here also we are experiencing that at top level who are channelizing out their efforts in the terms of the policy formulation, the planning mechanism is being done. They are being communicated towards the middle management, and the people who are holding out the post of the functional areas, working in the capacity of the functional manager, as in a production manager, as in a marketing, or as in a finance, or as in a research and development manager. We know that in the case of the services, the production and the consumption, they are happening at the same point of time. Even then, those people who are being deployed towards providing you, or who are in direct touch with the end customers, these are the people who are acting as a frontline staff. Their training, their orientation is very much being needed enough. Many times they are being deployed in the operative conditions also. They may be acting as an intermediate managers, they may be acting to hold up to the position of the intermediate level. So how to just connect out with the audience? Firstly, we as a marketer, we have to just make sure that their orientation, their training has to be given to them, so that if they themselves are knowing about the they are knowing about the characteristics, they are knowing about the functionality of the offerings that you are trying to propose, they will be worthy enough to communicate it effectively to the selected target audience. So this internal communication, it all speaks of the fact that here as an organization, we are using out the methods to be communicated amongst the methods, which is very much being diligent enough to be communicated amongst all the staffs which are being deployed in your organization, working in any of the capacity, working in the capacity of the top or the middle or the operative conditions. Now we know that every organization, they can communicate out with their their staff in preferably in the way of the written way, preferably in the written communication is being done. And why this written communication is needed, or it is being more being cherished enough, because we know that this written form of communication, which is in the form of the printouts or the handouts or the brochures, can be circulated, the memos can be given, different kind of editorials can be generated within the staff of your establishment, so that they can be just having a touch and a feel of the things that is being carried out in your establishment. Whenever they themselves are being knowing enough about the core aspect, about the core functionality of your offering, then only they will be communicating it effectively. So the intrapersonal skill, acting as an analyzing officer, taking out the role of decisional role, or communicating interpersonal, or communicating it in an intrapersonal way, communicating in an interpersonal way. Because we know that every organization, they are having different functional areas. Even if this different functional areas, they cannot work in isolation. We have to work in a cooperatism way. We have to have a feeling of the coordinated approach, and this cooperatism and the coordinated approach itself, it speaks of the fact that here we have to work in an integrated way. That is, the interpersonal skill is being demanded on the part of the managers, on the part of the employees who are working in any of the functional area in your establishment, and then only they will be coming out within an open discussion. The open forum will be there, and they will be able to communicate and speak of regarding the things and the thoughts that they are trying to generate upon, and definitely that will lead towards improvement in many of the aspect of the organizational implementation of the organizational procedural plans and the policies. So here the written and the oral communication is being talked of, and many times we are preferring to go in for the written communication, because they are more being supplemented to come out within the shape of the documentary evidence as compared to the verbal communication, because verbal communication is somewhat a communication wherein at many times people tends to get forgot. We as a manpower, we as an employee having many kind of having many kind of things that are moving around in our personality, that are moving around us, and we tend to get forget about that thing. So this verbal communication, many times they are being avoided because it acts as an inhibiting factor. Now moving on to the next slide, this is an external communication. This slide says that external communication is the transmission of the information between two organizations. It also occurs between a business and the other person in the exterior to the company. These persons can be clients, dealers, customers, government officials or the authorities. A customer's feedback is also external communication, and the organization invests a lot of time and the money to improve their image through the external communication. Now this slide says that the external communication basically it's being related with the transmission of the information between two of the organizations, maybe the organization which is dealing out with a business kind of entity, or even if we are trying to communicate out with an audience which are revolving in this competitive scenario in an external way. So external communication very imperative, very important to connect out with your target audience, and not only with your target audience, it is very much being imperative enough in this revolving and a dynamic society to connect and to create a binding relationship with the other stakeholders who are there operating in the environment. Now these stakeholders may be in the form of the definitely it is the customer and the consumers who are taking out their priority in our any kind of decisional area, because for the whom we are making out all our efforts, the 7 P's they are being crafted towards meeting out the expectations and the aspirations of our target audience only. And not only apart from the target audience meeting out the expectations and aspirations of the target audience, if we just elaborate, or if we just go in for the understanding the concept of the holistic marketing development, every service provider or the marketer, they do take into account that their offerings should be of such a nature wherein not only the expectations and aspirations of the target audience are being satiated or they are being gratified, apart from that we have to produce such an offering which is having a capability to satiate and which is having a capability to provide benefit to the society at large, and that is what is being talked of as a concept of the holistic marketing development. So here the external communication, an important way, an important tool to connect and with your stakeholders who are there in the environment. We are saying that the external communication is not only being limited towards towards connecting or towards crafting or towards evolving a strategy which is being connected with your business organization, but apart from the business organization there are other people acting externally and they are acting as a stakeholder, knowing out, having a direct or an indirect interest towards knowing out the functionality, that how you are trying to carry out your business or you're trying to operate in this competitive scenario. So their objective, you have to connect out with them also. Now these persons, as being said in the slide, that these persons can be in the form of the clients, the dealers, the customers, the government officials and the authorities. These are the persons who are acting as stakeholders, because the clients are there, the customers are there, the prospective customers are there. Apart from the customers, the government agencies are very much being interested enough towards knowing out their functionality, because it is you who are generating or who are creating an income factor for them. So definitely they are very much being inquisitive enough towards knowing out the things, how you are trying to propagate, how you are trying to create out the things, and at certain point of time they are inviting out the governmental intervention. Competitors are there, definitely the competitors will be having a direct influence, having the direct the direct interest will be involved, because they will be developing and crafting out their strategy to act contract or to give out a contract kind of a strategy. They will be contracting it, the strategy that you are trying to propose in terms of the 7 P's. And this is being said in the slide that the customer's feedback is also external communication. The organization invests a lot of time and the money to improve the image through external communication. Definitely one of the concept that is being used in the field of the external communication is the PR, that is public relations. Now public relations, an important area, an important department who is trying to or who is being established in each and every organization, in each and every entity. It is important enough to have this particular kind of area who is worthy enough to create and to bind up the relationship with amongst the different stakeholders who are there in the environment, and who are being talked of in the terms of the maintenance of the public relations image. Now, we are seeing that customers feedback in the sense of their response, customers feedback in the terms of their suggestions. In certain instances, the customers are giving you certain kind of suggestions for the purpose of improvement. They are giving you certain kind of suggestions which are acting to improve yourself. Suggestions in the form of how to get out with the things that are there acting in a present form, and how to just evolve diligently in a future course of action. So, these suggestions which are in the form of the improvement or the feedback, they are an important tool, they are an important objective of getting connected with your audience, with your clients, and this is an objective of the external communication, because we as in a business organization, or we as in a marketer, we are investing a hard amount of our resources, a very substantial amount of our resources, which are in the form of the time, talent and treasure. Not only the customers and the consumers, they are devoting out their resources in the terms of the time, talent and treasure before moving for the purchase process, and before assimilating any kind of services. Equally, it is being important if you are discussing from the perspective of the organization, from the perspective of the service provider, that they are equally investing their resources which are scarce in nature and which are being put into alternative uses. So, these resources which are in the form of the 6 M's, that is men, machine, material, many, method, market. Apart from it, there is a certain kind of psychological uncertainties, certain kind of psychological risk, the time factor, the treasure factor, the commitment of the resources which the organization is making in towards the selection, towards building up a good credible image. All these resources, the commitment of the resources, they in turn demands to have the selection of those medias, towards the selection of those promotional tools which are being effective enough towards meeting out your corporate objectives, and which are in consonance towards meeting out the expectations and the aspirations of your target audience. So, that is what is being said, that in the slide also it is being written that the customer's feedback, it is also being classified as an external communication, and the organization or the entity, they are investing a lot amount of time and the money to improve the image to the external communication, and which can be in the form of the development of the public relations department, which is basically we can say that is basically being taken care of by the public relations department in your organization. Moving to the next slide. Now, this slide says that the common external communication, how we can externally communicate, what are the important tools and the techniques that we can use for the purpose of communicating and connecting out with your stakeholders. Maybe any kind of technique you may go in for. You may firstly, we can have an advertisement, advertorials may be circulated, may be floated, depending upon the nature of the offerings that you are proposing in the market area. Definitely the advertorials or the advertisement can be of any type. We can go in for the print or the broadcast, or the digital mode can be chosen. Social media contents are there. We know that in today's competitive scenario, each and every consumer and the customer, they are getting more informed, they are more being aware in terms of the uses of the technological gadgets. They are more being informed in terms of taking out the reviews of the earlier consumers, customers who have used out your products, and they have posted out your reviews and the comments they have been given, and that will be serving as a parameter and the benchmark which will be useful enough to move in for the purchase process or not. So, this is the advertisement of the organization. The second one is in a response to the customer, response in the form of the feedback. There will be a positive reinforcement, there will be a negative reinforcement. If the customer, the consumers have purchased and they have gotten a feeling of the delightment, definitely that will lead to a repetitive purchase behavior, and that will be in a development of the credible relationship with you as in a brand, or with you as in a offering for a longer period of time. But contrary to it, if the customers and the consumers have a feel of the cognitive dissonance, that is definitely a a very challenging factor for the service provider, because cognitive dissonance is somewhat a feel wherein the customers have gotten a feeling of dissatisfaction. The cognitive word is being related within a mental beliefs, your thought process, and the dissonance is all being associated within a frustration. So, if the customer and the consumers have moved in for the purchase process, they have consumed out your products, but they have not been satiated enough with the offerings, definitely they will be evaluating out your offerings in terms of the cost and the benefit analysis. They will doing out all these kind of things. I mean, the value they have that they have got with the sacrifice of the price in terms of the the price that they have given in terms of making out the purchase decision. So, that they will be evaluating that the cost factor with the help of the values and the benefits that they have got with the purchase and the consumption of the product. So, if the value is less than the, or if the benefit is less than the cost that they have paid, definitely they will not be having that particular kind of feel, and they will be having the feel of the cognitive dissonance. So, cognitive dissonance should be avoided by the service marketers, by the service provider, and that particular kind of situation should altogether should be avoided, because that will lead towards tarnishing the image of your brand, towards tarnishing the image of your firm, and the goodwill will also be at stake. Now, the next external communication, as is being said, that you may either go in for arrangement of the press conference. The flotation of the annual reports and the letters may also be taken as one of the technique of connecting out with the audience. Many times it is being we as a stakeholder, we are trying to check out the efficacy of your functionality by looking in for these kind of techniques, that is the newsletters and the handouts that you are floating, the annual reports that you are generating, and we are able enough to gauge out the functionality, how efficient you are in terms of the different functional areas, how you are just trying to improve upon in the earlier course of action, what was the trend that was there, and in the present discourse how you are trying to improve, whether you are trying to improve or whether you are being stable enough, or whether there is a decreasing trend. That can also be they can be evaluated and can be estimated. Similarly, we can go in for the print media. A face-to-face meeting can also be arranged between two of the organizational heads. We can personally meet, a personal interaction can be done in person. Definitely, if things are being channelized, if you are connecting physically, that will have a broader kind of objective to fulfill upon, and those objectives will be in terms of broadening out your horizon, how to go in for crafting and formulation of the effective procedural plans and the policies, how to go in for development of the good ideas in terms of the 7 P's, or there can be other kind of objectives that can be seen or that can be fulfilled if one particular functional area is trying to meet up with another functional area. That can also be done. Similarly, flotation of the brochures, the feedbacks of the customers, the feedbacks of the competitors, the feedbacks of the government agencies. We can go in for the flotation of the questionnaires, the brainstorming method can also be done. The focus group interview techniques can also be associated, can also be floated depending upon the nature of your offerings, and keeping into consonance the target audience over whom you are trying to target out your efforts. So, all these kind of techniques, they are basically a technique to get connected with your external audience who are very much being imperative enough to give you a greater kind of information, and who are in a position to give you or you as a marketer, you are in a position and a capability to garner a substantial amount of information and the resources from these kind of people who are operating in the external bodies and who are acting in the form of the external stakeholders. So, I think that in today's discussion we have dealt with the internal communication and the external communication. What are the techniques that can be deployed for the internal one? What are the techniques that are very much being feasible enough to go in for the external communication? And I hope that you have understood the concept of the internal and external communication. So, with this I am ending up my session here only. Till then, stay safe and stay blessed. Thank you all.